welcome to another tutorial. So for today's tutorial, I thought I'd do something a little different. Now, you all know that I said that I wanted to try new things, and one of the things that I've been experimenting with is painting in Procreate. So if you have Procreate, you can follow this tutorial along, you don't have to change anything around. Unfortunately, I don't have any other drawing app, such as like Adobe or Photoshop. Actually, I have Photoshop, but I don't use it. So I'll try my best to keep this as simple as possible, and so that you'll be able to translate it into other drawing apps. So I am going to be using brushes that are native to Procreate, so you won't have to download any new brushes or install any new brushes. We're going to be using the brushes that are completely native to Procreate, and we're going to be painting a piece like this. Like, I really loved this piece, but I want to make another one without like the window effect. So I just want to make just a regular, painting. So I figured I'd record it and show you how I did it. It's super, super simple, and it's just a matter of blocking in some colors. It's very simple, and I hope that you are going to enjoy it. All right, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is start a new canvas. I'm going to go over to the gallery, and if you press this little plus sign right here, you'll get some canvases. So I will show you what my canvas specs looks like, and this is the one that I use most often. It's a 3000 by 3000 pixels, so 3000 height by 3000 width, and the DPI is 300. This is going to give you 55 layers. You'll have more than enough to work with. I don't really mess around with any of the other settings for this canvas, so that is what I am going to use, if it'll open up. Okay, so we have our canvas. Now let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is to pick some colors. So what I did with this one is, you all know that Procreate, if you have Procreate, you'll know that it comes with some built-in canvases. So for this one, I'm going to use one of the default canvases that are already built into the Procreate system. So if you go into if you click on the little color tool and go into palettes, you'll see the palettes that are available. So I think that I am going to pick this one called Flourish. It has a ton of different colors. So I'm going to set it as a default so that it'll come over to this first little tab called disc. I like to work in disc. Sometimes I will work in classic so that I can slide things around, but most times I work with this. So when you hit the default canvas, it'll add it right into this area. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, oh wait, before we start, I just want to let you know that when I first started drawing in Procreate, I started drawing as if I was painting watercolors. So I hated working in layers, but I have really, really come to love it because it really helps, especially to clean up any mistakes. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to add a couple of layers so that we don't forget to do that later. So just click the plus sign, and I added 4 extra layers. So we have 5 layers. And that's just so that we don't forget later on. I sometimes forget, and I just start really getting into it and just drawing one on top of the other. So we're going to start with the layers. We are going to go to layer 1 and let us pick a color. I think I am going to go with a more greenish tone for this piece. So I'm going to pick the third one from the top. So we have picked our color, and now what we are going to do is pick our brush. So we're going to pick the brushes that are native to Procreate. So I've made a folder where I put all of my favorite brushes so I don't have to constantly be looking for my favorite brushes. But I will tell you right now, the first brush that we are going to be using, and I'll tell you where they are. So if you wanted to put them in a separate folder so they're easy to access, you can do that. But the first brush that we will be using is called the Hard Airbrush. I love that brush. So you can find that brush under airbrushing, and it is all the way at the bottom. So you can work with a grid on to make your lines perfectly straight, but I'm going to show you a little tip so that you don't have to put the grid on. So I'm just going to eyeball where I want the water, and that's the first thing we're going to do. So I'm just going to, whoops, one thing I want to do is make sure to lower the brush size just a little bit. And I'm going to draw a line across, hold it so that it straightens out, and then press your finger on it and it'll lock to the grid. And you'll see here, it'll give you a perfectly straight, even line. So we're gonna put that in the middle and lift up. And now you can either take the color and, take the color and drop it to the bottom, or you can color it on your own. In the interest of time, I'm going to drop the color in. All right, so we have our water. Super easy, right? Very easy, water. Now, remember to go up to a new layer. So we're going to go to layer 2, and we're going to add in some mountains. We are going to switch the color. So we had the third one. Let's go over to this like bluish purple one. Let's see which one looks better. We'll test it out, okay? So here's that one. And the one next to it is this one. I think I like the blue. So I'm going to go to this bluish one, and we are going to draw in some mountains. So another super easy, simple way to do this is doing the exact same technique we did with the water by pressing and holding. So let's do some mountains. I am going to go up, hold it so it gets straight, press, and it'll put it on a nice plane for you. Hold it so it gets straight and press. Make sure it reaches the bottom. You don't have to press if you don't want to. So if you want like a nice skinny mountain, how about we do like a really nice, super, super skinny mountain. So let's go to a new layer. Let's go to a new layer because we're going to have our mountains intersect. So we're going to go to a new layer. Let's go up to layer 3 and let's have a nice skinny mountain. So we're going to hold it, and I'm not pressing because I don't want it to be on that grid, and holding, and we have a mountain. Now I'm going to go back to this layer because this mountain, the one that we're adding, is not going to be touching. It's going to be behind this mountain. So let's go back to that layer and continue adding some mountains. And I'm coming back up here. So as you can see, for the bottom layer, I'm putting mountains that don't touch, that don't intersect, so that we can work with them individually. So I want to put another one here, but I don't want it to be on the same layer as this one because they're going to be touching, and I want to be able to work with them separately. So I'm going to go back up to this layer, and I am going to do another little mountain here. Whoops. Let's try to keep it even. Okay, so now we have our mountains, and we're going to go down to layer number 2, which are these 2 mountains. And you can do one of 2 things. You can either color them in on your own, which I love to do, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to do here. Or you can close them off. And I'm going to press so it stays on the grid, and then fill them in. So let's do that. If you see here, there are some imperfections. Don't worry about that. We'll tackle that later. And color that in. And we're going to do the same for the top 2 mountains. If you need to be able to see back there, and obviously these mountains are in the forefront and they are blocking them, you can just press the little check mark and that will turn off that layer. And let's fill these in. Okay, So we have our mountains, we have our water. Now let's add a sun. So we're going to, again, go to a new layer and look for a yellow. So there's a nice yellow here, but I want my yellow to be a bit brighter, and there aren't really any bright yellows here. So I'm going to move this over and move this up and make it a nice bright yellow. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So we are now going to draw a sun. And I want to put the sun right behind this mountain here. So since this layer is on top of this layer, it's going to be in front of it. But for now, we're going to work with that and then we'll push it back. So we're going to draw a circle, hold it, and press, and that'll make it circular. Now, it's on its own layer, so I can adjust the size and make it smaller or bigger. So I'm going to go to the little arrow, and I'm going to make the circle just a little, well, not just, a lot smaller. And I'm going to put that right in the middle of that mountain there. And I am going to fill that circle in. And now I want to make the circle, make the sun look like it's radiating some of the, the warm sun rays out. So in order to do that, we are going to duplicate the layers. We're not going to do all of this, drawing the circle by hand. We're going to do it the easiest way possible, and that's by duplicating the layer. So I'm going to duplicate that. And this layer, I want it to be a little more transparent than the sun, because as it radiates out, I want all the layers to be a little bit more transparent. So I'm going to press this N here and lower the opacity. So I think I'm going to lower it to about 40, and let's see how that looks. So this one is in its own layer, so anything I do to that will only affect that layer. And I am going to make that a little bit bigger. And you see it's a little bit more opaque than the sun. We are going to continue adding more and more layers of this sun. So we are going to duplicate the one that we just made, and we are going to lower the opacity. Let's try 20. 21, I guess. And then we are going to make it bigger. And you see it's even further reduced. And now we are going to duplicate it once more and lower the opacity. How about a 6? And you can play around with your opacity layers and see how you like them. You can play around with the size of your sun. Now, I already see that I think what I want to do is make the radiating out a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go back to my sun layer. And I think I'm just going to make this just a tad bit bigger. And I'm going to make every layer after that bigger as well. So I'm going to make this one that big. Go up a layer. And I'm just eyeballing it to make sure, it's pretty even. I'm just eyeballing it. And then the last one is going to radiate off of the page. Once you're satisfied with the placement of them, once you've made sure like they're all even, just pinch and bring all of those layers together. Now, once you've done that, you can take that one layer and you can resize that as well. So you can make that one layer bigger, you can make it smaller. Just remember that you chopped the top off of the last layer, so you're gonna have a straight line across. So make sure that it stays up there. Okay, and now I want to bring this behind the mountains because I want it to look like the sun is coming up from behind the mountains. So I am holding this layer and bringing it all the way behind that first layer of mountains. So we have our sun. Okay, and now we are going to paint the sky. So we have another layer here, which is layer 6. And let's pick a nice sky color. I think I'm going to go with this color. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe not. Maybe I'll stick with the mountain color and then just make it a little bit lighter by moving that. Okay, perfect. So another simple way to do this, if you don't want to color it, we are going to draw a line straight across, hold that down, and fill in the top. Okay, now we have that. And you're like, oh my God, I've covered everything. Nope, you haven't. We're going to take that layer and we're bringing that layer under the sun. And you have your beautiful sky. So I don't want the sky to be this dark. So I'm going to lower the opacity just a little. Okay. And you're like, what is all of this? What is this? Now is the time that we're going to fix a little of these layers here. So in order to make this a little bit more crisp, I am going to move this water layer on top of the mountains. And there you have a nice, crisp, clean line. All right. Now we're going to do a light gradient in the sky. So I'm going to go to my sky layer. And I want it to go from white up to this color. So I'm going to grab white. If you double tap close to the white, you'll get a pure white. If you double tap close to the black, you'll get a pure black. So I'm double tapping the white. And remember, I am on the sky layer. I'm still using the same hard airbrush. So we are going to draw a line across. And I'm just going to increase my brush size and fill that in. Fill this in. It doesn't matter if the line is straight or not. Okay, and now we are going to hit this little wand. It looks like a magic wand to me. I always say it's a magic wand. And go over to Gaussian Blur and hit Layer. Take your pencil, hold it down, and slide it over. And as you slide it, you'll see that the layers are blending and blurring into each other. And while you had that harsh line before, now it's blurring up into the blue and you have a nice gradient. All right, so we have our gradient in the sky, and now it's time to start adding in some details. So one of the first details I want to add is some clouds. So let's do that now. I'm going to put the clouds on their own layer, and the clouds are up on top. I want the clouds in front of everything, so I am making it the very top layer. I'm keeping the white. I'm keeping the hard airbrush, but I am lowering the brush size a little. Okay, and I'm turning this so I don't have to turn my canvas. And we're making some cute little puffy clouds. Super simple way to do it is just a line across and nice little puff ball and fill that in. You can straighten them out a little if you have any like weird little areas. So I am going to and fill that in. And we'll have one that's going over the sun. And we're going to fill that in. And again, I did the same thing. So just make sure that your lines are closed so that you'll be able to fill it in. And how about one coming out of the side here? Fill that in. And okay, we'll leave it at that. Now these are very, very stark white, and I don't want them to be stark white. So I'm going to lower the opacity by clicking the N, and I'm going to lower the opacity on the clouds and just make them like little hints of clouds in the sky in the background. So you see, you can see the sun through them. This is just a very, very simple looking cloud. Now we are completely done with the sky. We don't have to do anything else to the sky. The sky is ready to go. So now let's add a bit of detail to the mountains and to the water. But one of the things I noticed is that our water is missing the reflection of the mountain. And again, this is a very, very simple thing to do. So I am going to take one of my mountain layers, slide to the left, press duplicate, and then it's right behind it, so you won't be able to see it. Press the arrow, make sure it's on uniform, and then flip vertical. And there is our mountain. And if you see here, we try to lower it down, but it goes behind the water, and that's because the water is all the way on top. So we're going to put this flipped layer right over the water, grab it again, and then put it right under that mountain. So try to eyeball it. And now let's do the same thing for the little mountains. We are going to duplicate it. We're going to move it above the water layer. Click the arrow, click vertical, and then bring it down. And now I'm going to combine these two because we're not going to have any other like details to it. And I am going to lower the opacity. So I'm going to lower it to let's do about 20%. And it's going to give you a hint of that reflection in the water. Now, let's add some details to the water. So we are going to go into the water layer, which is right here. And we're going to add a new layer because we're adding the details on top of that water. We're going to add a clipping mask. And what a clipping mask does is that it masks anything that is not in the area of what you're working with. So I can't use a clipping mask and then go up here. I'll only be able to make marks in that water area. So that'll prevent me from making tons and tons of mistakes. We are going to set that layer to multiply. I am going to grab the green from here, and I'm going to lower this brush size a bit, and I am going to do a little swirly action just to kind of indicate where the light is hitting the water. Actually, I think it's too far over, so let me erase that and let's add it closer to the middle. Just a couple of fun swirls. And it's going to be thinner here where the mountain is blocking it, and it's the light is going to shine further and further out. So we're going on this side. If you can hear my phone ringing, I am so sorry. And we're going to swirl, swirl, swirl. And now what I am going to do is I am going to color that in. And you can take your time coloring this in. The drop tool may not work, or it may work, but it most likely it won't work. It hasn't worked for me. I can't tell you why. So I'm just going to color this in. This is very therapeutic too. You can round out some of those lines some more. Just round them out as you're working on them. This is like my favorite part. Just round out those lines. So as you see, I'm just tracing it first. You can double tap to undo. There we go. And I am just coloring this in. And now I'm going to play around with some of these blend modes because this is just a little too dark for me. So instead of hitting it to multiply, let's play around with some of these blend modes and see which looks best. Oh, see, overlay looks really nice. I think that I may stick to overlay. There's hard light, vivid light. You can play around with the blend modes. I think I'm gonna go with overlay. Do I want overlay? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. You can also, if you're not happy with that color and maybe you want a lighter color, you can just drag and drop. And I think I like this color the best. So I'm gonna stick with that. And I'm still using the same exact pen. Or sorry, I'm still using the same exact brush. I am still on the same exact layer. And the blend mode is on overlay. And now I'm going to add a couple of little blobs of light to the water right around this big one. So actually, let's lower our brush size. And we're just going to add a couple of little ovals here and there. And it's just little blobs of light. Just little tiny. Let's add up one here. How about one here? All right, so we have our little blobs. And now I'm going to add a new layer. And I am going to add the clipping mask so it just stays. It's still clipping to this one. And we are also putting this one on overlay. And the reason I'm adding a new layer for this is because now I'm going to turn my page and I'm going to make a couple of lines. But I'm also going to make a couple of lines that go over this little blob. And since I have it on overlay, you'll see that it makes it even lighter. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to add a couple of lines just to show a little bit of movement in the water. And it'll just all kind of shine through. There we go. We have a little bit of movement in the water. Okay, now we have that done. If you wanted to combine the layers, you can. So you only have one layer of water, especially if you're working with a canvas or like an older iPad that you can't get as many layers. Combine the layers when you're done. Okay, now we need to do something about the sun. We need to have the sun reflecting in the water as well. So I am going to duplicate that, put it over the water, and I am going to flip it vertically, just like we did for the mountains. Flip it vertically and bring it down to right around the same spot and lower the opacity. So you can see just a brief outline of that sun, but it's not, it's not super in your face. So we have our sun layer. And now let's do a little bit of work on the mountains. So if you remember, we had 2 layers for the mountains, and the reason that we had 2 separate layers was just so that we can add a bit of highlight from the sun on those layers. So the first layer that I'm gonna go to is the bottom one. And for the first time ever, we're switching our brush. So we're gonna go over here and we are going to be using the Bonobo chalk brush, okay? So now the Bonobo chalk can be found. Where can the Bonobo chalk be found? Let me see. Okay, the Bonobo chalk can be found under sketching all the way at the bottom. Bonobo chalk. I love saying Bonobo. That's so cute. All right, but I have it in my favorites because I use it a ton. And let us hit that Bonobo chalk. And we are going to up the brush size a bit. We're going to go to this layer and we are going to alpha lock it. And if you see here, let me bring the iPad up. Alpha locking has put like a little grid around it. And what alpha locking does is it lets it so it makes it so that you can work on that layer and nothing outside of the layer. And alpha locking is great for shading because you'll be able to get some really crisp edges. So I'm going to I'm going to give you a little example. Let me zoom this in. If I use the very tip of my brush, you'll get a nice dark line. But if I use the side of my brush, you can build up. You can build it up, you see? So you don't get that really harshness. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use the side of our brush. I'm going to tilt my canvas a little, and I'm going to use the side of my brush, and the sun is hitting this side of the mountain. It's hitting it right here. So I'm going to take the side of my brush, and I am going to start just adding a little bit of color. A darker on top, and I'm lightening it as it goes down. And remember, this alpha lock also was on this side right here. So we're going to take that brush. I'm going to turn it all the way upside down so I can have the same angle. And I am going to just make it a little bit softer as we go down. And there you have a nice sun highlight. And now we're going to go up to the tall mountains, and we are going to alpha lock it, and the sun is hitting it on this side. So we are going to do the same thing and highlight that section. And now for the top of the mountain, the sun is hitting it on all sides, including the top. So we're going to work one side at a time. So this is still the same layer. It's still alpha locked. And we are going to add some on this side, and I'm turning it around, and we're going to add some on this side. And as you can see, I'm making it very heavy on top, and you can almost not even see the top of that mountain. And I am dragging some of that out and applying really, really light pressure. And there is that mountain. So I don't really like the way that this part looks, so I'm just going to undo and try that little piece again. It's just very light. I pressed too hard there. And there we go. And that's it. Super simple. It was so simple. And you didn't use that many layers. We used a couple of layers that we merged together and then ended up with 6. And there you can go ahead and try to merge some of the layers if you want to, or you can leave them. And you have your beautiful new piece. So now you can sign your work, post it, do whatever you want. I have a stamp brush that I use to sign my work that I made, and it just says Vanessa Lesniak 2021. So I'm going to go to the very top layer, and I'm going to grab a different color. Let's grab this purple, and I have my stamp brush, and I just stamp. So then I can make it smaller, make it bigger. I like to lower the opacity and then stick it in a little corner somewhere so that it's not super, super obvious. Let's make that even smaller. And yeah, I like to stick that in a corner. And if you would like to learn how to make this stamp brush, that is going to be the next tutorial for the top 3 tiers. I'm going to show you how to make a stamp brush, and I'm also giving you some stamp brushes that I've made, such as a super cool moon brush. So stay tuned for that. That should be coming out next week. And I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. It's a little different, I know. I promise next month I'll bring you some more watercolor tutorials. You have over 50 to choose from right now. So this is just a fun little one that I had such a good time drawing. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.